Hey, I'm Jake with The Verge, and we're here taking a look at 4 new phones from Motorola in the Moto G6 and E5 series. These phones are all going to sell in the $200 to $300 range, but while they aren't flagships, they are really important phones. The Moto G series is Motorola's top seller, and apparently it's the #1 in its class. The Moto E isn't that far behind it. And this year, they're even starting to look a little bit more like flagships. They have 18:9 displays, octa-core processors, and dual cameras in some cases too. So let's take a look at them. So this is the Moto G6 and the Moto G6 Play. The Moto G has always been Motorola's $200 or so phone line, but the big deal this year is that they're really starting to feel and look like much higher end phones with 18:9 displays, and they have these nice curved backs that really look very nice. There are some differences between them. The Moto G is a little bit more expensive, it has a higher resolution display and a dual camera that lets you do all kinds of focus tricks in portrait mode. The Moto G6 Play is slightly lower end, it's going to be a little bit cheaper, but the big deal about this one is that it has a 4,000 milliamp hour battery, which Motorola says is probably going to last you well beyond a day. So one other cool feature on the G6 is that there are a bunch of gestures built into the home button. So I can swipe to the side to get to the app switcher, I can just tap it to get to the home screen, I can do back to navigate back a page. And basically it just takes over for all the buttons that would normally be built into the bottom of the display. That was on the G5 too, but it has a really pronounced effect here because by removing that we get much more screen space and it looks really, really nice on this tall screen. Now we're taking a look at the Moto E5 Plus and Moto E5 Play. Usually the Moto E line isn't as nice as the Moto G line, but it's not really the case with the Plus model. It has a big 6-inch display, and the really big feature here is the battery. It has a 5,000 milliamp hour battery, which is more even than the Moto G6 Play, and Motorola says it's going to last you well into a second day. The Moto E5 Play, on the other hand, isn't quite as nice. It looks a little bit older, has a 16:9 display with big bezels on the top and bottom, has a plastic back. I actually think that both of these phones still feel really nice. They're a little bit thicker than the Moto G line. They don't feel quite as fancy and high end, but they still seem like much nicer phones than they actually are for the price. Now look, I totally understand if you're really confused about how all these phones break down. That's why we're making this graphic right here to explain the differences between all of these phones. Basically, the Moto Gs are higher end for the most part than the Moto Es, but they really do start to blur in the middle this year. So if battery is your biggest concern, there is some reason to look at the Moto E line over the Moto G line. We don't have pricing information on the Moto E line because it's going to be up to Motorola's carrier partners. They're usually in the $100 or so range, but Motorola is hoping that with carrier discounts, they might even go well below that. All of these phones are supposed to be available around the same time later this spring in May or June. You might have noticed that there are actually 2 additional phones that we don't have here, the G6 Plus and the E5 just regular edition. That's because neither of those phones are coming to the United States. They might eventually, but at least right now, we're just starting with these 4. Thanks for watching. If you want more on the G6 and E5, we're gonna have a ton of coverage at theverge.com. If you're looking for something else to watch, be sure to check out SB Nation on YouTube. They're part of the same network as The Verge. They make a bunch of really fun sports videos, so go check them out.